Welcome to The Decision from Nashville EO, where you will hear the rest of the story after tough decisions were made by entrepreneurs who faced adversity and lived to tell about it.
Welcome to The Decision. This is the EO Nashville podcast, where we, entrepreneurs, usually we have a guest sitting between us.
Yeah, we don't have a guest today.
Yeah.
They're stuck with us. How are they going to enjoy this?
Well, I think you, the listener, if you're an entrepreneur and a business owner, you know how it goes. Sometimes we just have to improvise and make the best of things. So we realized this last night, and I immediately said, we need to talk about how we came to name this podcast The Decision, because there's a whole story about it. Some people that are probably going to watch this have heard it before, but most people have not. So let's do it. Let's talk about it.
So first off, who are you?
I'm Eric Jackson. Sorry, we're off our game completely. I'm Eric Jackson, 15-year member of EO Nashville, past president in 2017 and 2018.
Wow.
And
Robert Hartline, member since 8 years ago. Yeah, 8 years I've been a member. And a lot of growth has happened because of EO. Yeah. And that's what we're going to talk about today.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about a subject that you may resonate with. If you don't resonate, I promise you have somebody in your circle that this will resonate for.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Robert and I, we've known each other probably since you joined. I remember going to lunch with you when you had your store on West End. And, but we didn't really know each other very well. I mean, we'd see each other at events and things. And,
acquaintances.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so we got paired up as chair and co-chair of marketing and communications for EO Nashville last year. And the conversation started with that I told Robert, and I've done this job before. I've been Marcom chair twice before. And, Samira always asks me what I think and, when in terms of what should be next for it. And I told you that I regret one thing from when I was president. Well, I regret a lot of things, but the one thing that stood out with regard to what I wanted to accomplish was having some recording of the stories that happen in EO. That I think that as a chapter, we take a lot of pictures and we tell people what happens in EO. We describe it to them when we're trying to explain what the EO experience is. We use a lot of our own stories, or we relay secondhand stories that we have heard that we can share. And it just doesn't have the impact that a story coming out of an EO member's mouth, displaying the emotion, talking about all the fear and the anxiety and the other emotions that they were going through when they had a choice to make. And I felt like if we could record those things and we could share those with the world, then people could hear those and learn from those independently of EO. And it will help us to explain what being in EO and being in Forum actually means to somebody in terms of real world examples. And those stories can live on for many years. And so that's what kind of how it started, but it really started, I guess, with the walk.
Oh, the walk, the famous walk. Yes, the walk.
So why don't you talk a little bit about your journey to sobriety?
Okay. Yeah. So my story is like a lot of people's stories. And really, it's a story of, now that I know, and we had a podcast guest that wrote the book called Driven. And it was the first book that I read that I was like, oh, I am not alone. I am like a lot of people who are driven and have a tendency to have an addiction of some sort. And so, blast in the past, probably 2015-ish, I honestly was, I I had progressed into a daily drinking a bottle of wine consistently. And it was my coping mechanism to celebrate when I had a good day, or to deal with some stress. And first you use it for celebration. Next you use it for all the other days because it's great. It tastes great, right?
Yeah.
And one of my favorite cost of drinking stories. I used to have some stores in Tri-Cities, Tennessee. And if you're in Nashville and you've never been to Tri-Cities, it's 6 hours away. It's a long way. And I was having one of those days. I had drank too much the night before. I had to drive early to go visit one of my stores. And I had that event that happens in a lot of people's business where everything goes wrong. But everything goes wrong in the course of three issues, and one after another. And I happened to be in the store. Everything went wrong that day. I could not, for whatever reason, the employees were not cooperating with me that day. And when I was leaving the store for that day, I noticed a competitor that we actually had a chain of wireless retail stores, long story. I was in a shopping center with 2 Sprint stores, and Sprint had told one of us to quit. And I'm sitting here saying how ridiculous it is. There's these 2 stores here and no one's telling which one to leave. I just surrendered. I was like, I saw the district manager said, dude, can you hire these employees? I'm done, right? Fast forward, that store became the most profitable store in the Southeast. That store made between $700,000 and $900,000 a year in profit.
Oh, wow.
In profit. I mean, I gave up that store because I was tired. I was exhausted. And it was all because of alcohol. 100% affected my decision-making. That's one of many stories I could tell. But for me, I did a 30-day sobriety challenge. And that after that end of 30 days sobriety, a friend of mine that was not a super good close friend of mine was at Losers, left Losers in the afternoon, told all her friends that she was getting an Uber. She did not get an Uber. She took her daddy's truck up to Hendersonville, and to make a very long story short, she had a very terrible accident. She passed away. And it was knowing that her son was not going to have a mom. She was a single mom. And that it just happened right at the end of the 30 days. And it was divine timing. I don't know. But that was it. I was like done. I was like, now I've never said I'm never going to drink again. I've never wanted to give alcohol that much power, but I haven't drank. And what's really amazing about that, because EO came to the mix around that time period. Mm-hmm. And I literally went to an EO Nerve event, and it really transformed my whole business. I mean, I took the energy that I was wasting, and I just went right into something of good, and get better as a dad, get better as an entrepreneur, get better as a leader. That really, it transformed me, and I owe a lot to the EO, of course.
You can transpose those.
Yeah. How I had the ability to leverage EO when I had the right energy. And, the contrast between being a drinker and then to take that away, and you got to put your energy somewhere because your body's like, what the hell, and having something to sink your teeth into is a very powerful way to get into sobriety in a powerful way.
Yeah. Well, I knew that you had been sober as we were beginning to wade into this podcast venture. And so one of the things that we were honestly struggling with was a name for this. We kind of knew that we wanted it to be about stories, but we didn't really know what we wanted it to be called. And I'm in marketing, and, we name things a lot. I mean, we've named several companies, and it's something that I always want it to have a good name, right? Something that will resonate, that can be searched on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or whatever. And so it was just kind of, it needed a good name. And so Robert and I would go on walks at Radnor Lake. So I called him one day and said, "Hey man, I'm struggling with alcohol, and I know you're sober and have been for a few years. I would love to hear your story because I have tried multiple times to quit. It never seemed to take." Funny story. Some of you listening to this may know my friend Reed Kelly, who is with Viking Mergers and Acquisitions. Fraternity brother. I mean, we've known each other since September of 1986. Wow. And we're going to a Predators game one day and meet up. And he's like, "Hey, you want a beer?" And I said, "Man, I feel terrible. I am really hungover. I'm thinking about quitting alcohol, quitting drinking." He said, "That's the same thing you told me the last time we were here." I thought, "Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah, I don't doubt it." And it was probably another year before I quit after he said that. So we go on this walk and Robert tells me his story about what he just described.
In a lot more. I went deep. I went the 5%.
Yeah.
Eric.
2% probably. I mean, it was very impactful, and it was hard for me not to get emotional just hearing all these things. And I'll back up one step further. I mean, some of you that are EO Nashville members listening to this may have been to the Warren Rustand event where he came in and spoke. Warren Rustand is kind of he's a staple of EO. He speaks at EMP, the Entrepreneurial Masters Program, every year. Plug for EMP. If you haven't done it, you should consider it. So he was the final speaker on the last day of the first year of EMP. So we're just introduced to this concept of EMP, and we hear all these world-class speakers, and he's the last guy. And he's describing his life in detail about how he has done so much and achieved so many things. And at one point he said he's never touched a drop of alcohol. And he's talking about his life now. He's 80 years old and he works out every day, and he lives on this ranch in, I think it's Tucson, Arizona. And all his kids live in the same property, and he's got 19 grandkids. And he just got this idyllic life, and he has built the life that he wanted, and he's living it. And I couldn't help but think of myself and where I'm going. And I just saw a tired old drunk who didn't achieve everything that he wanted to achieve. And I think everybody in the room at that point was crying because he was describing things that he had done with his life. And I won't spoil it if you ever want to go see him. And he came to EO Nashville, and I got the opportunity, along with Ginger, who's also in my EMP class, Ginger Jones, to introduce Warren Rustand. And I couldn't help but get emotional because your conversation with me and telling me your story, combined with 3 months earlier, hearing Warren's talk and making me confront where I was headed, those things combined really made me consider what I was doing with my life. And so sometime after that, we got together again, and I said, "I've got the name for the podcast." And so I knew that I needed, again, marketing guy, right? I got to have branding and messaging. I can't just make up a reason for why I quit drinking. I got to have something that sticks, that lands, to shut people up. Because in my past experiences, it was like, "Oh, not going to drink tonight, huh? You too good," or you big baby, or the old responses that I used to get on occasion. I think a lot of that I just dreamed up. It didn't happen as often as it probably did. But I told people I've made the decision to quit drinking because alcohol no longer serves me. And that made people go, "Oh, really? Tell me more." Which is what you want with marketing, right? And I'm not marketing. I am marketing this. I'm marketing myself as a non-drinker at this point.
No,
I don't want to do it anymore because it's the same reason why we all make change in our life. It's the pain of carrying on like we are is worse than the pain of change. And so I decided that I was just tired of living this life. And we decided,
for our audience, like, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. And we decided that, the decision it's what we do in EO. Everybody makes decisions, right? But entrepreneurs, I mean, you get 1,000 decisions a week and you never know which one is going to be the most important. And some of them, it's obvious they're vital, but sometimes they're really hard. There's not a great clear-cut path. And we don't all have a process by which we make decisions. Most people don't have one, and I don't. I mean, we consider the good, the bad, and the ugly, and then make the best choice we can with the information we have at the time. But we don't necessarily know that it's going to turn out well. And we've had guests on this show that, things didn't end well. But in many cases,
it ended perfectly.
It ended fine. It ended the way it was supposed to end.
Yes, yeah.
And they moved on and did something better than they ever would have if they had continued down the same path. I've had the same thing with my business. I had a split with my business partner, and we're both doing great. We're going to have dinner with our wives here in a couple of weeks. We're both happier.
So back to sobriety, what was life like? Just go through the journey of the decision to today.
Yeah. So, yeah, gosh, once I heard your story and I realized that if I continued on as I was, that it would not be a good end for me, that there were things that I was going to miss, might not see grandkids. I would have health problems. I mean, not proud of it, but, I've gotten in a car before, having a couple of pops, as they say, and, not being under complete control. And so it just became apparent to me that I just needed to stop. And I never felt like it was impossible to just quit. I did. I mean, I just stopped. It was spontaneous sobriety, I think is the term for it. And so I just stopped. And I've still got this terrific bourbon collection in my basement where my office is. I walk past it several times a day to go to the bathroom, and it has zero hold over me. And it's kind of a reminder that this is what life used to be. I used to live for the end of the day when I could go over and hear that ice crack.
I mean, it's the whole experience.
Yeah. And it was,
I would be lying if I did not acknowledge that there's a part of me that misses that, but the benefits are just totally outweigh a short moment in time where,
Yeah. Well, the other thing, so I'm, where you've helped me in so many ways. And one was you introduced me to my therapist. And the reason why that got started is my wife and I are watching a movie and something happened and I realized, I'm kind of a jerk. And so you recommended me to somebody who is fantastic. He asked me a question one day in therapy. Tell me about Eric Jackson. Tell me about your life. Just kind of walk me through the years. And I talked about, 0 to 9. I lived in on the coastal area of Virginia. I was born in Newport News, Virginia. And then right before I was 10 years old, I moved to Tennessee. And so for the next 8 years, it was, living from 1977 to 1986 in Gallatin, Tennessee. I don't know how many of you were around back then, but especially in Gallatin, drinking was a pretty normal thing for teens. We'd get chased around town by the cops. And, I remember instances where we would get caught drinking at a boat dock or a boat ramp. And they're like, okay, pour it out. Which one of you is the most sober? All right, you're going to drive home and we'll follow you home. Wow. It was a different world.
Yeah.
And not saying it was better for sure, but that was just the environment that we lived in. And so I did my fair share of drinking back then. And I go from that to Knoxville, Tennessee. At the time, UT Knoxville was one of the Playboy's party schools. And by golly, we sure tried to live up to that fraternity life. And it was the first party I went to was the summer of 1986 before school started, and had like a 2-day hangover after that event. Like, I think I found my crew here.
Yeah.
And did that for 4 years and came home and just never stopped, became
the false
an entrepreneur.
Sense of connection.
False sense of connection. Became an entrepreneur. More alcohol. I had a business partner that drank, and he's backed way off. It just became a thing. Joined EO. Our forum would go out of the country, and we'd have a good time. I was right there, ready to burn the candle at both ends every single time. And so I guess what came out of that was, oh yeah, there's a reason why my behavior seems normal to me. It's because I've been in one culture after another where excessive drinking was not only accepted, it was encouraged.
Yeah.
And I'm not blaming anybody else for that. I am mine, as the Pearl Jam song goes. I am responsible for my own well-being and for my own happiness and for my own decisions.
Yeah.
And I ceded that to what was going on around me, and I let other people influence my behavior, but ultimately it was my responsibility. And so the conversation that Warren Rustand engaged the audience in, the conversation you and I had at Radnor Lake, made me realize it was no longer a thing for me, and I walked away from it. Now, all that said, life is a hell of a lot better than it was.
Well, you know what? It was number one, Eric, I've seen you with your shirt off. and
don't read anything into that. It was at the pool.
He was at the pool. But dude, you've lost weight.
Yeah.
You look healthy. And you are different and in a good, meaningful way. Like I can tell you're more conscious. You're more like aware, and there's just a demeanor that happens when you go through this. For me, my experience has been the first several months you're learning how to be in a room with people. And then you're really learning how to be in people at a bar, at a restaurant, and then everyone's asking you, well, why aren't you drinking? And you have to tell the story, and you're like, what do they think of me? I was a raging alcoholic, and my story wasn't like that. Your story wasn't like that.
Yeah. And
so you have to kind of be bopping around. But this is what I've learned over the years. People start going, well, was it hard? What'd you notice? Did you lose weight? Is that why you lost weight? Your face looks better. Like they, and then you're like, yeah. And it's almost like in their mind, they're like, you can tell they are thinking out loud. They are literally like, they have a problem, and they consider not a big problem. Right. But when you get down to brass tacks, and just exclude the money you save when you're not drinking, right? When you talk about the power of really connecting with your family because you have energy, that's why you should stop drinking. When you're able to connect with your employees because you're not drinking, you're focused, that's another reason. When you wake up early and you don't feel like Dookie, holy cow. And then the weight starts coming off. And I noticed, once you get past that 3 or 4 month mark, I would say even month 10, I would drive down the street and I would see stuff that I'd never seen before. I was not aware. And I would see things that all so much more clearly about the way I am with people, the way I operate, some things I wasn't happy with that I had developed over the years, these programming that I had to get out of. So the growth was, for me, beyond the looking better, feeling better. I've always worked out, but you can't outwork out an alcohol problem.
No. I did CrossFit for a while. I really got into Olympic weightlifting, and I won several medals, which is pretty easy to do at 47 years old because there's nobody else fool enough to throw, 250 pounds over their head. It was just this thing I was attracted to, but I'd go work out and I'd be hungover. And I never did my best at that stuff. It was just, I was going through the motions, but not really doing all the work necessary to get fit and get healthy, and finally did it. And to your point, the people that I would run into would go, "You look different. What's going on with you?" I wouldn't tell them I was sober now, but they would notice. And I went to the first Predators game this year, and guy that sits in front of me, Matt Geezy, he said, he looked at me like, "Where did you go? What happened to you? You look completely different. You look great." It's like, yeah, this is what happens when you're not taking in all these empty calories.
Yeah.
And working out.
Yeah. It's, I think a powerful message that I really want to get across, Eric, is this. Both you and I are ready to walk with anybody.
Yeah.
Because we can help so many people experience life in a meaningful way. It's so short. And the fact that, I have some guilt because honestly, the first 7 years of my oldest's life, I was drinking. Mm-hmm. And I'd come home and I was so tired, and it only took me an hour drinking and I was usually passed out on the couch. And I'm not proud of that. And so, I think personally, my feeling is like we have an opportunity to share our story, whether you want to come walk with us or whatever. We'd love to walk you through that. In January this year, we started our first 30-day Sober Curious.
Yeah.
And we had several people in the program. And all it is a WhatsApp group, just sharing stories, and, a lot of people shared very deep, painful things. Mm-hmm. And some that have had decades of sobriety. And I was inspired by a woman, Rhonda Marcos. She owned Destination Nashville. Mm-hmm. And she's got 3 decades of sobriety under her belt. And that woman, I always said when I stopped drinking that I would honor her by not. And that's, I have felt, in fact, what's so crazy, I had this weird dream last night. I drank last night and I woke up with such guilt. And then I was like, because, sometimes dreams can be so real. And her name came to my head right off the bat when I thought I had drank. Mm-hmm. And how, it's so irrational. But I remember you telling me when you came up to your 1-year anniversary, and that I get emotional just hearing you, you talking about walking with another man on his sobriety journey. And just that felt so good to me.
Yeah. I've actually got a call with a guy who lives out of state. I've known his wife for probably 15 years. We became friends many years ago. She got married and moved on, and we've reconnected. And her husband wants to talk about what sobriety looks like. I was at the Texas A&M game a couple of weeks ago, I guess, and the game kind of went late. It was a close game, and so nobody left, and 105,000 or so people on campus. We just decided, well, let's just go back to the tailgate and hang out for a while. And a couple of Texas A&M fans came over, and we're chatting them up. And I don't even remember how the conversation started, but guy had a beer in his hand and offered me one. I said, no, I don't drink. And he was a little surprised. And we got into the conversation about why I don't drink anymore. And, 90 seconds later, he was crying, telling me about his dad and his struggles with alcohol and how he died early and how he struggles with it and how he's, carrying all this weight around. And, and so I certainly don't want to be that, what's the most annoying person in the world? The former smoker, has to tell everybody how bad smoking is. I don't want to be that person, but I'm also not going to shy away from the story. And because I think, and we all learn from each other if we're doing life right. And that's part of what EO is, we share what our struggles are, and then we get to hear what other people have done when they were in the same situation. So, Robert I have talked to a number of people about this. We're going to do Sober January again. For anybody that wants to participate, we'll be sending an email out to the chapter. And this is something that I created My EO Sober. Mm-hmm. So there's a My EO group that's a global group, and I've done absolutely nothing with it. But, I think that's something that we together can grow into a community of people who have decided to live life a different way. And I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about that the week before my 1-year anniversary of being sober. So I was pretty proud of the fact that I had not had a drink for a year. I mean, that was the first time that had been true since I was probably 16 years old, And so Katie and I, my wife, we decided to go to Dancing Bear Lodge in Townsend, Tennessee. It's part of the quiet part of the Smokies, and nice little cabins and just terrific food at this place. They've got a restaurant on site, a nice fire pit, just beautiful place and just amazing food. So we have dinner there on Friday night when we arrive. Next morning, we get up, hike in the park. If you don't believe in God, go walk in that park. You'll realize there's something greater out there. We come back, grab a quick bite to eat, have a massage, right? An amazing massage, both of us. Take a nap, wake up, get ready for dinner. I'm showered up, I'm ready to go. Feel amazing. Go to the restaurant. Second night, right? I'm going to have something different to eat, spend probably 2 hours with each other and just enjoy the time. And so I had some non-alcoholic beer the night before, and I'm looking through, I'm like, I'm going to try this other one. So I order the Untitled Art, I think it was a Italian Pilsner, which if you've never had that, tastes great. You don't even know you're not drinking alcohol. I've always loved the taste of beer. So I order one of those, guy brings it out, tastes great. We're having appetizers, ready for dinner, order another one. In total, I have 3 non-alcoholic beers over the course of about 2 hours. And so we're about ready to leave and ask for the check. And the guy brings the check, and I'm looking at it. I'm like, that's weird. I thought the beer that I ordered was $6 and not $8.
Ooh. And
so he comes over, and I say, hey, man, no big deal, but I ordered a different beer. It was the Untitled Art West Coast IPA. That's important because apparently at Dancing Bear Lodge, the restaurant, there is another West Coast IPA that's not made by Untitled Art. Untitled Art makes non-alcoholic beer.
No.
So he had brought me 3 West Coast IPAs that were 4% alcohol. And I know what you're thinking. Did you not know? I mean, after hiking in the park, a beautiful massage, a big nap, I was out of sorts. I felt better than I had in a long time. So, and so I ended up drinking 3 beers. Well, fast forward to, first of all, I was mad. For a hot minute, I was mad at him for serving me something I didn't order. And I didn't say anything. And when I did tell him that I don't drink alcohol, he just went, I'm sorry, kind of mouthed the words. I'm like, well, he didn't mean to do it. Right. So I forgave him immediately. No harm. He didn't know. I was really hard on myself for several days. I considered whether I was even going to tell anybody about it. And so what ended up happening is I had horrible nightmares that night and could barely sleep. Woke up the next day, had a horrible hangover from 3 beers. Wow. And I realized, oh yeah, there's a reason why this is the right decision to be sober, to never drink again.
Though.
Yeah.
I mean, at the end of the day, it's just a reminder how you made a good decision.
Yeah. I'm thankful that it happened.
Yeah.
Because it reminded me of why I made that decision. It also made me question, well, how did you deal with this? Because at some point in my life, 3 beers was just a starter where I'd then go into either wine or alcohol or bourbon or all 3.
Yeah.
And just, I was just abusing myself. Mm-hmm. So it reminded me that I'm human, that when I do go out to eat and I tell somebody that I want a non-alcoholic beverage, I look at them and go, "Are we clear?"
Yeah, I always make my wife drink it like she's like the court jester, you know, tested the poison.
The king's food taster.
Well, you know, I hope this podcast is heard by people to know, hey, if you want a conversation, we're not going to make you feel guilty or make you feel judged. I mean, it's just, you know, I think what helps is personal story.
Yeah.
And this is what EO is all about, personal experience. Like when you hear an experience sharing, you can see yourself and others. It is a powerful way to have a reflection of you.
Yeah.
And help you with a decision.
Absolutely.
So if you are an entrepreneur right here in Nashville, EO Nashville might be for you. You can visit eonashville.com. There's 345 entrepreneurs in Nashville, Tennessee, who get together once a month in what we call a forum to share best practices of life, good experience share, and just really help you navigate life as a driven entrepreneur. Thanks for watching and have a fantastic day.
Thanks for listening to the Decision Podcast by Nashville EO. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.